scripture this morning that Paul read talks about hope. It says, those who are rich in the present age should not set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides. When it comes to climate change, I often struggle to maintain hope amid this crisis. The situation seems to worsen by the day, while as a society, it seems we can't come together to agree on solutions. We just follow the well-worn path of business as usual. Greta Tunberg, the young Swedish climate activist, talks about the ideal of hope in one of her most often repeated quotes. In her typically defiant, tell it like it is way, she says, adults keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to feel hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if the house were on fire, because it is. What both the Apostle Paul and Greta Tunberg have in common, it seems to me, is the notion that action is the most important thing. Greta is clear about this as she reiterates it 3 times. Paul's phrase is good works. They are to do good, he says, to be rich in good works. Like Greta, Paul discourages false hope, saying, don't set your hope on the uncertainty of riches. When I reflect on our present age, however, it seems like that is exactly what we are doing. As Americans, the allure of riches is a part of our culture, and it's exceedingly difficult to avoid the trap of believing that material wealth will provide security. We spend a lot of thought, energy, and financial resources accumulating what we believe will safeguard us from personal disaster. The irony is that this lifestyle is resulting in the destruction of our planet and our children's future. We are orchestrating our own demise. And how can this create anything other than a feeling of insecurity? I think Greta, who is 17, speaks on behalf of her generation when she says, I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. I want you to act. That would be the foundation of her hope if we all took action to address climate change and prevent the inevitable disaster of continuing business as usual. That would be the foundation of my hope as well. I long for the life that is really life, as Paul says, where I could revel in the richness of what God provides. But instead, I feel anxious and overwhelmed by the scope of the problem. Along with these feelings comes frustration at the ambivalent approach our society is taking on solving the crisis. That is, one step forward and one step back. I educate others. I advocate for climate policies. I model a low carbon lifestyle, and yet I feel guilty about the amount of energy I use. I must remind myself that I can't change the world on my own. Then I start to feel helpless. I look out at the beauty that remains in the world and grieve. What if we can't find the will to address this crisis? What if the wilderness disappears and the polar bears become extinct? It would be a loss that would cut to the very heart of me and of God. But I know I can't get lost in these feelings. I must keep trying. I must act. That's the only way I can remain hopeful. I must act, and it's what I want you to do too. When I'm surrounded by climate champions, I feel hopeful. We must do this good work together. supporting each other and inspiring mutual hope. It's the only way we can solve this crisis and establish a good foundation for our children's future. It's our calling, not just mine, but all of ours. We are called to be good stewards of creation. That calling has never been more critical than now, and it requires an active commitment from all of us. The Green Justice team is proposing a poignant theme for this year. We are calling it a year of climate resolutions. We hope that it will inspire the Kirk to come together as people of faith, to act on behalf of the planet, and to take hold of the life that is really life. Now, Robert will share with us his thoughts, his faith, and his experiences.
Hi. It's easy to see that Anne's faith drives her concern about climate change. It leads her to cherish the earth and take seriously her responsibility as a steward of creation. Her passion for the planet is plain and her cry for change is clear. While my faith plays a role in my response to climate change, what drives me more is my relationship with the outdoors. I love being out in nature. I have to get out and get my nature fix, or I lose my perspective. It is not unusual for me to spend 30 nights a year sleeping in a tent in some remote area, whether it is climbing to the top of a mountain, hiking to the bottom of a canyon, or canoeing down a river. I am happiest when I'm outdoors surrounded by the incredible natural beauty that God has generously given us. Climate change threatens all that. An increase of just a few degrees threatens fragile alpine tundra, bleaches vibrant coral reefs, and thaws the ice and snow in the polar regions. Earlier springs, warmer winters, lower snowpacks, severe drought makes it difficult for plants, trees, and animals to survive, let alone thrive. Currently, many nations have set a goal to keep global temperature increase under 1.5 degrees Celsius from the pre-industrial age. This is the point at which many scientists believe the effects of climate change cannot be reversed. I read an article in the Denver Post last week where the national parks were having to reconsider their mission of preserve for future generations. Apparently, climate change may be changing ecosystems such that plants and trees that previously grew in the park may no longer be viable. As the old trees die, new non-native invasive species are thriving. The Park Service cannot simply try to replant the same trees as the climate is no longer conducive to them. The options that they are considering is to plant trees that do well in warmer climates. The forest would no longer be as it was in the past. It would be a national park with a new kind of forest. In the same week, a news article talked about Lake Powell. This year, the water levels will be at the lowest since they began filling the lake. This is all due to the severe drought caused by climate change. Years ago, I went to Lake Powell when it was at its fullest. We boated up a forgotten canyon to see a ruin called Defiance House, named because of the warlike pictographs nearby. The water level was high enough that we only had to hike a few hundred feet to see the ruins. When I visited the ruins not long ago, we had to tie the boat up nearly a half-mile away and hike up to the ruins. Along the way, we actually hiked past the buoy that used to float at the entrance of the canyon. And then just this week, the scientists announced they think we will occasionally brush up against that 1.5 degree Celsius temperature goal within 5 years. If we thought we had time, we don't. Just as Greta Thunberg referenced, we need to act now if we want to rescue our planet. Let us not destroy our gift from God. For my own part, to address climate issues, like many of you, I made simple changes to my life, like using reusable bags and my own water bottle instead of using plastics. Then, as I became more focused and educated on the issue, I've taken, at least for me, more challenging actions, such as going meatless a few nights a week, using the cloud, not paper, for saved documents, and changing travel plans so that we fly less but stay longer. Now I find that I cannot make a decision without considering its impact on the planet. As I reflect on the scripture that Paul read, what strikes me the most is the directive to be rich in good works. I think this calls us to take action. We must use our good works to make changes that will lead to a more sustainable planet. Next, Paul will share his perspective on how climate change impacted his life.
Robert, thank you so much for sharing that. It's awesome. Well, since I was a child, I've felt the connection between God and the earth. And there's this feeling of a spiritual connection between all of life in conjunction with the physical interdependence of life, i.e. the web of life, that's fueled my life's mission to be a steward of life on earth. Being a steward of life on earth has provided me a powerful and a practical means of loving God, by loving and caring for all of life on earth every day. Since becoming aware of human-caused portions of climate change back in the 1990s when I was in college and studying like advanced meteorology courses and things like that, I've seen this issue as one that has the potential to unify people under a cause larger than themselves, because mindful that our actions, how we heat, cool, light, travel, as Robert was referring to, how our food is grown, have an effect on other living beings in God's creation. And it's something we actually have the ability to make better, to be more loving towards our fellow man, woman, living being, by making the changes in our daily lives, which are currently resulting in the pollution at the root of climate change. But many of us simply haven't known what to do. Now, I found the best way for me to act as a steward of life on earth was by working to make our buildings as energy efficient as possible and being an actor in separating our culture's dependence on fossil fuel resources to heat, cool, and power our buildings. Since we in the US live, work, and spend tremendous amounts of time in buildings, which currently account for approximately 40% of annual energy usage in the United States, it was buildings where I set my sights and where I see so many of us having the opportunity and a pathway to be good stewards towards God and earth. So that's been my path. And it's an important area where we can all act. But there are so many ways we all can help care for creation and mitigate climate change, beginning with the simple things we can do. We're going to show you through this introductory video, 12 Steps to Combat Climate Change, that I produced on behalf of Heart of a Building. This video will be followed by us sharing these 12 steps in subsequent 12 videos, one per month over the next year. But before most of us will act on any of these 12 steps, it starts with us having a change of heart. As we shared in our scripture reading today, caring for creation and minimizing the impacts of climate change can come to fruition if we can be rich in deeds and generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age. So as you watch this video, please look inside of yourself and ask, am I able to open my heart and be rich and generous in my deeds in order to take hold of today and become an inspiring source of shaping the future by acting daily from a place of love for God's creation? Now, please enjoy this video, the introduction to 12 Steps to Combat Climate Change, and send us any questions that you have through the chat window.
We all impact the world with our activities and choices. Thank goodness or we wouldn't be alive. But how much our impact affects others in terms of having a healthy planet to live on, as well as the availability of resources we all need, depends on how lightly we tread while we're here. In North America and many other parts of the world, our impact on the climate comes from how we transport ourselves, what we eat, and the comfort levels in our homes and places of work. In this case, being more comfortable, not less, is actually better for the environment. That's why I decided to create this video series, 12 simple steps you can do to combat climate change. But before we explore each step, here's a little background. Did you know that many of the world's fossil fuels have multiple uses? Petroleum is the most diverse of these resources with amazing properties to use to make durable products like plastic piping, roofing shingles, house wrap, foam insulation, among many other things. These products will last for decades or centuries. Yet so much of this amazing resource is burned for transportation and heating our homes and buildings. That leaves less to be used in creating these cool, durable products by future generations. This has always troubled me, and I spend even more time reflecting on this today. In 2019, with the ever-increasing alternatives to power our transportation and heat our homes and buildings, other fossil fuels such as natural gas and coal have been great resources to light and heat our homes, but there has always been the challenge of pollution. Even though natural gas produces less pollution than coal and petroleum, they all have that downside. We need to quantify this externality, to use a nerdy economics term, in the cost benefits of burning these resources. They are all also finite, which means we should also include a value because of the opportunity cost, to use yet another nerdy economics term, for future generations, since this resource will be less available to them. I've heard for decades from people concerned about climate change that this is such a big problem. How can we effectively address it, reverse it? The beautiful thing is that nature, God, Gaia, has amazing healing properties, so long as each and every one of us cares to do a little something to reduce the pollution and make it easier for the healing to proceed. This statement is based on how we've all seen the world heal. For example, Lake Erie used to start on fire back in the 1970s. Now aquatic life has rebounded there. We also need to consider faith, a faith in each other that as we continue to learn about the effects of the pollution and experience more extreme weather events and witness the melting permafrost in the Arctic and ice shelves in the Antarctic calving off, our hearts will call out for us to understand all of life is connected on this one beautiful world, and we will make the changes. This will come from a widening love for God, our children, grandchildren, all other living things, and all those yet to be born. In this series, I'll give you 12 small changes each of us can do. Or if you're already doing them, do them a little more often to be significantly contributing to help the world's healing process. I hope you enjoy.